is we are going to jump in here. Let me get this out of the way for now. And what we're going to do is there's going to be 3 ways that we're solving these systems. One of them is going to be graphing, we just got done with. One of them is going to be substitution, which we're going to start today. And the last one will end up being elimination, which we'll get into after this first quiz. So, here's going to be our key today. We're always going to have 2 equations, but one of those 2 equations is always going to either be x equals or y equals. It's going to be solved for one of the variables already. So what we're going to be able to do at that point is we're going to be able to take that one, the one here's already got x equals, and we're literally going to take it and plug it in to the other equation. We're literally going to pop it in right there, because when it says x equals, we literally mean this is what x is. I can take it out. You're like, well, why would I want to do that though? Because it makes it look like it gets bigger. But here's the thing though. I can't solve it when there's 2 different variables. I can only solve for one variable at a time. So if I plug this in for x, now it's just y's that are left. I can go ahead, do my work, distribute, combine my y's, do all that good stuff, and get an answer. And once I have that answer, I can plug that number back in to figure out my other variable. Now it does, I'm not even going to lie, it takes some work, okay? It absolutely is going to. Out of the 3 methods we're going to talk about, this is going to take the longest. But that's also a reason why we don't do as many problems, because, well, we don't need to do as many. We'll get some enough practice here. So whenever you're doing a page like this, or whenever you're doing any problems like this, the first thing I want you to do is go through the sheet and see which equation in each one has either x equals or y equals. And we're going to box the other side in whenever that happens. And sometimes it may be x. I know it is x on both of these. Sometimes it may be y, and we'll see that too. But once I box that in, here's what I'm going to do with it. I look to see which variable it's solved for. Well, this one's solved for x. So here's my job. My job's to take what's in that box and plug it in for the variable that it goes in. So for both of these, since they're both x, I'm just going to draw an arrow from the box to where I'm going to put it, which is the x value this time. And this is why I like the whole thing with colored pencils, or maybe like a pen and a pencil or something like that. Because here's how I'm going to do this. I'm going to start writing my expression until I get to the x. When I get there, I'm going to plug what's in the box in there. Everything else is going to stay the same except for that. And I kind of like to number my steps. If you don't want to, that's okay. But my first step's always to take the one that's solved for and plug it in. Because now all I have left is y's. That's a good thing. So if I've got 5 y's and I take 3 away, how many have I got left? 2. So that's going to make it pretty easy for me to solve this. Let me move this out of the way and we will get that done. So if 2y equals 14, what's y going to equal? Or what's my last step going to be?
7.
Divide, it's going to be 7. Perfect. We got both answers at the same time. But here's the kicker. Don't stop. We're so used to, well, we got something equals, we're good. Not quite. Stay focused. Once I do that, my last step is going to be go back to that one that I boxed in. And I'm going to plug the answer in. So -3, but I know what y is now. I just figured it out. It's 7. And just multiply them together. That's the short one. And once I've got my 2 answers, I have one for x up here. I have one for y down here. Normally what I do at that point is I turn it into a coordinate point and circle it up or box it up or whatever, and I'm good to go. And that's all there is to these. It's just substitute in, solve, plug that number in, I'm done. Same thing going on number 2, but here's, I would say out of this entire section, here's the thing that gets people. When I plug this in for x, Notice the 4 didn't change. It's just the x. And I replace the x. I literally make it go away. I scribble it out and replace it with this y plus 8. Because again, the whole point of this is to get to a point where I only have one variable that I'm solving for, because having two variables just makes life hard. So I am going to have a little more to do this time, because I've got the parentheses. Well, we always know how to distribute. We've done that a bunch already. So I'll distribute my 4. I'll multiply my 4. Send that through. Because anytime we have parentheses, we got to do the distributing first. But this time, sort of like what I did on number 1, I have like terms that are on the same side of the equals. So 4 plus 2, I got to watch my signs. It's going to be 6. But now I want to work on getting y alone now that they're all together. So what should I do next to work on getting 6y alone? One step before divide. Perfect. So all that equation stuff we were doing for the first week of the term, now we're seeing why that was kind of important to get in. Because now, when I'm trying to solve these, I can. So I plugged my value in, got it to one variable, solved the equation, I was good to go. But again, don't stop at this point, because I still need to know what my other variable is. So my other job is to take that answer I just got, that y value, and plug it back in for y. So negative 5 plus 8. Again, the y literally disappears. And that's going to be 3. And I just write it as a coordinate point. Again, this is really going to kind of test your detail, paying attention to, and your patience sometimes. It is. So similar to what we've been doing on a lot of these, I want to do a couple more here, and then I'll help out with some others. Actually, let's go up here. Let's do number 3. And again, find that one that says y or x equals and get that done first. I want to find a couple that are weird. 6 is going to be weird. There's one more type I want, and I've got it right there. Okay. So we're going to take a look at 3, 5, and 6. Notice again, we've boxed in the one that either has y equals already, so y is solved for, or x equals already. It can be either. So once I do that, again, my job is, well, this says y equals, so I'm going to plug that in there for y. This one says x equals. I'm just going to draw myself an arrow to remind myself that's where it goes. I can't plug it in for either. I got to pay attention to what this says. If it says y, it's got to go where the y goes. Don't have a choice. So once I get that set, I'm like, okay, I'm actually ready to do something here. So I'm plugging into the first one. So 2x plus 3, I crossed out my y because now I'm going to use what's in the box. Kendra, put that away, please. Thank you. So what we're doing here, we took out the y. Now I only have one variable left, x. And like we've done in the others, if I see parentheses, and I do, I've got to do my distributing because I've got to work on getting my x's together. And again, when we distribute, we're multiplying. So as we go here, just like we have on a lot of them, I may have some like terms that I can put together. And again, they're both plus this time, so nothing to worry about with my signs. So once we've combined the like terms, how do I work on getting 5x by itself? How do I? Yeah, minus that 12 out of there. And some of you may say, well, wait a minute, now what do I do? Because there's nothing left over here. 0 is a fine thing. Because if you divide 0 by anything, you always get the same thing back. 0. So that's A-okay. And then just remember that last part is taking my, in this case, y equals, I'm going to plug the 0 in for x. And then it's just x, y, just like it is in the alphabet. X comes before y in the point, just like it does if you're doing your ABCs. So it just is about getting into a rhythm, basically, with these. Because once you get into that rhythm, things don't go too bad. Now here, same idea, except now it's x equals, so I'm plugging this in for x. So x is gone. That's why I like to scribble it out so I can remember that. So I replace the x, or substitute, since that's the name of the section, with what's in my box. Distribute that through. Now this time with our combining like terms, there's one possible pitfall. And that one possible one's going to be that my 6 here's got a minus in front of it. And I have to pay attention to that. Because if I plus 6 and call it 18, I'm not going to get the right answer at the end. 12 minus 6 is 6y. And as long as I can avoid that, I'm probably going to do pretty well here. So once we get that set, okie dokie.
Okay, and I also need,
Oh dear.
bring all your stuff.
What if I ain't coming?
Well, then I guess I'll just have the administrator come and get you. I mean, I'm just doing what
You
I'm,
tell him come talk to me.
huh?
You tell him come talk to me.
Well, why can't you go up there and talk to him?
Oh, true. Damn.
I'm just doing what I'm told, okay?
Yeah.
So if he tells you otherwise, then you can come back here, then that's fine.
So as some of you keep going with these, you get your variable solved for just like we have before, still plugging it in here in our box just like we did before, except this time we actually get to do a little work. So 4 times 5 is 20, minus 2 is 18. And be careful this time, because you always don't just want to do, well, this, then this. Remember, it's x, then y. And I can be done. Lots of little stuff. Getting you ready on the whole detail orientation of things. And then just one last one, because this one looked a little bit different to me. This time, when I substitute in, notice this time I don't have like something plus or minus, it's just the 5x. That's okay. Still got to have the 3 that's in front of my y. This one will actually go faster. So I just plug in that 5x where the y is, because that's what y equals. 3 times 5 is 15. And now it's just to combine like terms. Now, what number's in front of that x when I don't see one? 1. So 1 and 15 more get me 16. And then I do my divide, like I typically do on these at the end. So I get my 2. And then just like I've been doing on all of these, I'm going to plug that 2 back in up here into my original problem and get my y. And this is one of those, especially on day 1 of this, where you're probably going to need to leave this out so you have something to look at and go, okay, now how am I supposed to do this? How? And you may have some issues come up the first time or two, and that's not out of the ordinary. So what I want to do, because we usually do a pretty good job when we do it this way, I'm going to put this note sheet aside, but again, keep this in a safe spot. When we get to the quiz, you can use it. Our work that we're going to do is going to be off of here. So when I go to do these, and again, it's always a good idea up at the top to write down, okay, this is the second homework check, this is the third assignment, because sometimes we may get overlap before we have a homework check. That can happen sometimes. So again, what I would do is I would go ahead and do all of my boxing at the very start here. In other words, I'd go through, and every time I saw x equals or y equals, I would go ahead and get those all boxed in. Because then, when it comes time to do this, and that's kind of crazy, every single one on this side is y, I'll know where it's going to go each time, and I can kind of get everything prepped and ready to go. So I know where it's going to head. And just like what we've done on all the rest of them, I'm just going to do my 2 steps and I'm going to be done. So in this first one, I'm plugging into y. When I get to the y in that first equation, though, I'm not going to use it. I'm going to go ahead, use my other color, maybe a pen-pencil combo here, so I can see what I'm plugging in. I'm plugging in what's in the box. And now I'm just going to do me some good old-fashioned multi-step algebra here. But watch your signs. 3 and -2 is -6. Positive and positive is +9. And it's going to be all that little stuff that determines if this goes well, because you shouldn't be getting like fractions and things on these. These should be coming out nice. 4 minus 6 is -2. If a little assistance with the calculator would help you on that, I say go for it. And once we get that set, we're just going to go ahead and do our opposites. In order to get everything set and ready to go. And I think the only thing that might get us here at the end is, remember, you're multiplying by -2 here, so I don't want to add 2. I want to divide by -2. And these are the types of problems that when we get to a quiz, you know, I'm going to say there's lots of partial points. So even if you have a little error somewhere, just keep on going along. Once I have this set, my last thing here is to start rewriting this, and when I get to the x, because I know what that is now, it's not a mystery anymore, it's -2. Get that plugged in. So let's see here. Negative times negative is positive. And And 4 plus 3 is 7. And I did notice I do have one weird problem on the back. I want to hit that one up too here before I let you loose here. I think you'll like this one too because it's another one that makes life a little bit easier on us. But the process basically goes the same way. The weird ones are on the back. Because if you come up like on number 11 here, 11, 12, and 13 all have the same thing. You're like, wait a minute, they're both y equals. So what do? If they both are in x equals or y equals, we're going to set them equal to each other. In other words, if these both equal y, I can just take each of those and set them equal to each other. So I'm not going to be substituting in necessarily, at least it doesn't look like I am. I am actually, but you can put them in this way, and now I have to solve them. But here's the difference. My x's aren't on the same side anymore. So now I got to move them. And again, you can move them any way you want. I know a lot of you like having x on the left side. So if that's the case, this time I have to do an opposite. And again, the reason for that is because they're on opposite sides of the equals. They're on opposite sides of my equation wall. So once I do that, then it's going to start looking a little more normal here. Because now I just have one x term. It's right there. And I just have to solve for that, and I can plug back in. So if I'm trying to get that guy by himself, I'll minus my 12 because I'm trying to get it by itself. And again, my 12s are on opposite sides of my equation wall. Be careful with the details. Like it looks like negative and negative, they just cancel. No, they're opposite. And then just divide. And negative divided by negative is positive. You're like, okay, so I might understand your first step, but the second step is always to plug back into like y or x equals. They both are. Pick whichever one you want then, because you'll get the same answer. I think the bottom one to me looks easier, so I'm going to use that. So y equals, the 8 goes in for my x, minus 12. 8 minus 12, I believe, is negative 4. And I've got my answer, because again, I always do the x first and the y second, just like you would in the alphabet. So your job is to work through the rest of these, kind of using these as your examples. We'll see this again, whatever day I see you again, whatever that happens to be. And